Hi guys, welcome back. This is a video tutorial on how to draw and shade a realistic box. Okay, so these are the materials you're going to need on the bottom right. You want your swatches and gradients that you worked on last time. That's where you practice the fundamentals of shading. We're going to use that in some specific ways to call out the different kinds of tones we're using. You also want a pencil, eraser, a sharpener, a sheet of paper, and your phone so you can submit this onto Seesaw. Our objective today, like I said, is to use what we learned about shading to draw a realistic box. We're also going to do a cylinder later on, but today we're going to start with a box. Like this, when we're talking about the swatches and gradients that I said you want in front of you, that's what this is what that looks like. On the left side, you got the different boxes with the distinct tones from 1 through 5, white to black. Next to it, there should be a gradient. We're going to use both. So let's get into this demo. Get your sheet of paper and your pencil. On the left side, we want to draw a box with a cast shadow, and we want to leave room on the right side for your cylinder. Okay, so in the middle left area, what we want to start with right about here is a vertical line that's about 1.5 inches tall. One way you can estimate that length is the distance between these two knuckles on your index finger. That's usually about 1 inch. So if you have 1.5 of those, you have a 1.5 inch vertical line. You want to second one of those vertical 1.5 inch lines to the left and slightly pushed upwards. Okay, so you want the same length line on the left side of it, a little bit up. Connect these endpoints on the top and bottom to create a parallelogram. And you want to make sure that these two lines are parallel and these two lines are parallel, meaning they're going in the same direction. If we extended them out in either direction forever and ever, they would never touch. That's what parallel means. Next step, we want to draw diagonal lines from this corner, and this corner. You can make these a little bit longer than you actually need. We can clean them up later. The main thing is they all need to go in the same direction. They all need to be parallel. Once you have those three lines, draw a vertical line right over here. And at this intersection, I can erase the extra on that diagonal line, as well as over here. The last line we want to draw is right over here from this corner, going that way so that it's parallel to this edge. So I'm going to turn my paper. One way you can kind of capture the direction of a line is to go back and forth over here. I'm not drawing over it. I'm just capturing the movement and the angle in my muscle memory, and then I just need to shift it over to that corner. And that should get you a pretty clean result. You can clean up these corners. And there you have a box. So far, that should have been some review, okay? We're gonna work on drawing something new today, right? And that's the cast shadow of this box. To start with, we want a diagonal line starting from this bottom corner, right? Going at a slight angle right about there, okay? Where that pencil is. So I'm gonna tilt my paper to help me out. We want this to be good amount of length, maybe a few inches. We'll cut it off. We'll shorten it as we need it, okay, in a minute. But to start off with, just draw a nice long diagonal line like that. And then here's the trick with casting a shadow of a box. This top surface is what we basically want to stamp out and copy paste over here. Here's what I mean. First, we want to start with this edge. I'm going to label it don't label yours, okay? This is just for demo purposes. This edge, I'm going to label it as 1. Okay, we want to basically copy and paste that same edge right about here. We want it at the same length and at the same angle. Okay, so just boop, pop that out and make another one over here. So to do that, I'm going to capture the angle of this with my muscle memory right there, move myself about here, and that should get me a line that's parallel as well as the same length. I actually need to adjust the angle of it just a little bit. So this line should be identical in terms of its angle and length to that line. And at this intersection, I can erase the extra I've got on the left side. Okay, so that's 1 to 1. Again, don't label it like I am. I'm just showing it for demonstration purposes. Edge 2, this one. We want to do the same, okay? Basically want to copy this, boop, right over here at the same angle, the same length. I'm going to use my muscle memory technique to capture the angle and length of this, and then just move over here. And that's the second edge we got there. So 1 to 1, 2 to 2. After this, the way you finish off the outlines of the cast shadow is by taking the same angle right over here, the line we started with. This is the angle at which the light is coming from. We want to take the same angle and just move it over here. Okay. So that's how we draw a cast shadow for a box. Okay. You start with the angle of the light. You copy paste this one edge as well as this second edge. And then you make a line that's parallel to the angle of the light. I'm going to erase these labels right there so we got a nice clean image to start with. Once you have a drawing that looks something like this, a box and its cast shadow, we're now ready to start shading it in. Here's the important part. Once we're done shading, you don't want to be able to, all these edges that we drew, all these lines, they want to disappear. Okay? So one thing you might want to do is take your eraser, pick one sharp edge of it, and lightly run it across your image to lighten up those lines, to ensure that it's easier to make these things disappear. Make sure that your paper's free of eraser dust afterwards, because that can kind of mess around with your shading. So take a look there. I'm going to be referring to the different grades of darkness by their number, okay? We're going to start by shading in this one single plane right there, okay? And we're going to be shading that in at a value of 4, which is the dark gray. Before we get there though, let me explain why this plane is so dark, okay? We are starting amongst the planes that are visible to us, the 3, this one is going to be the darkest. Let's say we're looking at this box right from above, okay, straight down at the up and down from above right here. So let me draw that out for you. So this is the top of the box, okay? What we also have, let me draw these a little thinner. It's a little too thin. What we also have is the cast shadow of the box. It's looking something like that. The fact that the cast shadow is in that, looking like that, means that light is coming from this direction. Okay, so that's looking down at the top of the box. This is all the cast shadow that's being projected onto the ground. If we look at where the planes are at relative to the direction of the light, I have this plane over here and this plane over here that are facing the light. Okay, there's plenty of light that's coming in at this angle and bouncing off of it, all right? But if you notice, right at this corner, the planes of the box actually start to turn very, very dramatically. They turn away from the light. So this plane that I just highlighted in green is facing away from the light. This point is something we call the terminator. The terminator is the point at which the surfaces of an object begin to point away from the direction of the light. In our drawing, the point that I circled over there and called the terminator, in our drawing, that's this edge over here. Okay, so starting from this edge, going to the left, this plane is facing at a dramatically, like at an angle that's away from the light. Okay, much more so than this plane that I'm pointing at right here. That's facing the light. So that's some of the kind of three-dimensional reasoning behind why we're starting with the darkest plane over here. Okay. All right. So we're going to begin by shading in this plane, and we're going to work it to a 4, okay, a dark gray. Hold your pencil long ways, okay, as long as you can. I'm actually using that magic wand grip that I told you about right from the get-go, okay? So tilting my paper so I get a good angle. My first layer of gray is going to be going up and down like this, all right? So we're not going immediately to the darkness we want. We're going to slowly build up that dark gray tone. And again, we're going to take this all the way down to a 4, a dark gray. So each layer you put down wants to be as even as possible. Keep your stroke direction consistent for each layer, meaning I'm going up and down and I'm not changing directions in the middle, all right? There. You're gonna get some like overshooting here and there. It's okay, we're gonna clean that up with our eraser later. It's much the same process as filling in those swatches that we did before. So my first layer was going up and down. I'm going to do my second layer at a diagonal. I'm using the same pencil grip. Okay. The longer you grip your pencil, the lighter your pressure is going to be. And you want to force yourself to limit the amount of pressure you put on this, okay? It depends on how naturally heavy your hand is. Okay. For the amount of pressure that I naturally put down, I'm going to go somewhere between 4 and 5 passes here. Okay, 4 and 5 layers. So that's my second layer. For my third one, I'm going to rotate once again at the other diagonal. And we're going one layer at a time, slowly building the value up to that dark gray tone that we want. Keep your strokes within this parallelogram as much as possible. But if there's a little bit of overlap at the edges, like I said, we're going to clean that up later, so it's okay. I might go 2 more. Okay. So I'm tilting my paper again to go at a different direction. I'm putting down a little bit more pressure than before, since I already have a foundation of a few layers. So there's already a base of even, smooth tone that I can work off of. Let's see where we're at. Maybe one more pass, and I'm back at my original vertical direction. And that gets me to about a dark gray. I might, yeah, maybe just one more pass to make it a touch darker. And then once I got the tone down to what I'm happy with, I'm going to use my eraser to clean up the edges. This is an important step. We do want these edges to look as sharp as possible. So clean up all 4 of those edges. All right. That's the darkest face right beyond the terminator. Done with. Let's go with the second darkest face, which is this one to the right, the bottom right. Okay, for this one, we're going to fill this in to the point where it's at a 3, that medium darkness. So we want to work in multiple layers again, but this time you're going to apply even less pressure. My first layer is going down at this diagonal. And that is a very, very light layer of gray. Okay. Second layer, I'm going to tilt my paper at about 45 degrees from the last angle. I think I'm going to put down 1, maybe 2 more layers. Okay. Tilting my paper once more. Now I'm at the vertical angle. The more layers you put down, the smoother and more even your tone's going to be. So to plan for that, that's why we use as light a pressure as you can to slowly build the value, instead of going dark as soon as you can. I'm going to go just one more super light pass, and I'm back at this diagonal direction. Okay, so that's about a medium gray. I'm going to clean up the edges. One thing we want to make sure we got here is a clean and very visible, distinct borderline between the 4 we got here and the 3 we got there. Okay, this edge wants to be nice and sharp, good and visible. the last form, the last plane of the box we're going to shade in is the top plane. This one is all the way down at a 2, light gray. Light gray, guys, is just a touch darker than paper white. Absolutely use this magic wand grip, and we only have one shot, meaning one layer in a single direction. You want to pick between either this diagonal direction, following the direction of this edge, or this diagonal direction, following this edge over here. Okay? I'm choosing this direction, and starting from the left side for myself, I'm not even putting any pressure on the pencil. I'm letting the weight of the pencil itself do the work, and I am slowly, as lightly as I can, putting down a single layer of extra light gray. I've got a little bit of streakiness over here. I'm going to touch up with my eraser. And then I'm going to clean up the edges here and over here. So that's the box itself, right? It doesn't look too three-dimensional when we just shade in the 3 planes like that. However, when we start working in the cast shadow, that's when things are going to look a lot more realistic. The cast shadow is a different thing, right? It's a little more tricky than laying down like a even tone of gray like we've been doing. The cast shadow gets lighter as it moves away from the object that's casting it. Okay, so this portion and this portion and this portion is going to be slightly darker than the far left edges of it. Okay, so that's how cast shadows work. They get lighter as they get farther away from the object. We're going to fill the whole thing in at about a 3, but then the right side that's closer to the object, we're going to have that a touch darker. Okay, and it's got to be a smooth and gradual transition. So first we put down a light layer of gray. I'm just going in the vertical direction here. So we're going to slowly build this area of the cast shadow to a tonal value of 3, or that medium gray. Alright, that's to begin with. It's still pretty scratchy, so I'm going to put down my next layer at a different angle. It's a little bit smoother. It's almost to the degree that these guys are the same, at least to my eyes. So starting from the 3rd layer right here, we want to make sure to darken in the portions of the cast shadow that are closer to the box, and leave the cast shadow on the left lighter. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this reference image so we can see a little closer. I'm actually going to flip my paper upside down. It's easier for me to work with the darker shades and then lessen my pressure as I go to the right. So I'm going to take advantage of that to darken in this area and lighten up my pressure as I move towards the right side. We don't want to neglect this small sliver of shadow over here. That wants to be just a touch darker than 3. Just evening out some of the lighter spots over here. Now what you might find is that the edges between this dark plane and the cast shadow are starting to disappear. What you can do is just sharpen up the edge and darken in this one single plane just slightly overall. Don't overkill it. We don't want to take it all the way to black. This still wants to be a dark gray. So I'm pretty happy with that. We have a very, very subtle difference in the cast shadow where it's a little darker on the side that's closest to the object, and it gets lighter as we go farther away. I'm going to use my eraser to clean up the edges of the cast shadow. Get rid of any remnants of that outline that we started with to map it out. Okay. The last thing we're going to do is, it's called an occlusion shadow. The occlusion shadow is something that happens when light can't make it into like dark crevices and corners. In our case, that corner is right over here where the box sits on top of the floor plane, okay? Here's what you want to do. We want to take this small area all the way down to a 5 or black, but it doesn't want to be a straight line, okay? It's not just a black line right here. You want to darken it in toward so it's a 5, but then by the time you make it out to the edge of the cast shadow, it wants to be blended in to what it was over here, which was a slightly darker 3. Okay, so it's an edge right there that you blend out into the rest of the cast shadow. Out of everything, that is the only portion that goes all the way down to a 5. I'm going to lighten this up over here a bit. It's a detail, but it's an important one. The occlusion shadow, it does not extend up to this edge over here, okay? It just stays at this edge. It would wrap around, but we wouldn't see that because this plane is hiding that. And there you have it. That's a box shaded with some realistic shading right there, okay? We started with drawing the box itself, then mapping out the shape of the cast shadow. We filled in the tones of the planes in the box, starting with the darkest one that's facing away from the light, with some awareness of the fact that this edge is the terminator. It's the point at which the angle of the surfaces on this box starts to turn away from the light. This was second to darkest, and this was the lightest up top here. The cast shadow has a very subtle gradient from right to left, where it's darker towards the box. And then we have the occlusion shadow right over here, where the light cannot make it into this dark crevice. All right? Once you've got that done, what I want you to do is submit it onto Seesaw. All right? The assignment name is Realistic Box and Cylinder Progress. We didn't get to the cylinder, but that's all right. We're going to do that next time. Here's a preview of what's to come next time. All right. Next time we are going to turn in an assignment with both the shaded box and the cylinder, and it's going to be graded. And these are the criteria that I'm going to use to grade you. Firstly, I'm looking for that the shading is even and smooth, free from scratchy textures. Okay, so if you are looking at the box that you just drew and you notice that you got some textures that are looking kind of like that, you want to take another shot. Okay, as in you want to redraw that box or like try to fix that texture and smooth and even it out. Second thing, I'm looking for that your shading transitions to go gradually from dark to light tones without any visible borders. In our situation here, we only had a very slight gradation between dark gray and a slightly lighter gray in the cast shadow. Once we draw the cylinders and spheres and things like that, the transition and the gradual transition is going to be really important. Over here, I would mainly look for a gradual transition from this black, the 5, into the dark 3 that's in the rest of the cast shadow. If it looks more like a line or just like a darkened in shape, that's not a gradual transition. So that's what I'm talking about here in the second item. Third, I'm looking for that your shading includes the full range of tones from black to paper white. If you noticed here in the box, the only place we had a 5, the black, was in the occlusion shadow. So you're not going to have black everywhere. It's probably going to be very selective, but it still wants to go from black to very light, and in some cases all the way to paper white. So that's what's coming up next time. Okay, I think that's all I got for you. Submit this onto Seesaw, and yeah, next lesson we're going to get into shading the cylinders. So good luck.